Hello guys, welcome to another edition of the Pajabalance Council for July. Without the further ado, let's get into it. I will start with the nerfs. Power nerfs are pretty obvious, I don't think there is much to say about them. We have Cleaver's Muscle, which deserves a revert in my opinion, as Cleaver is way too good with Cleaver's Muscle at 7 power. Same for Sentient Spellweaver. I don't think this buff was necessary, and I believe that they should be reverted back to full power. I also decided to include Renfrey. Renfrey is still very popular on ladder, especially in the Blaze of Glory variant of the list. And I just feel like, yeah, it's too popular, too many people play her, and therefore she deserves another nerf. Power nerf is less impactful than a provision nerf, but that's mostly because I feel like she doesn't need a big nerf. Just like a, yeah, small change. Then let's get to provision nerfs. So Seagull here is mostly an attempt to fight the Seagull coalition as they try to buff Seagull by power, which I really dislike. We already had a season with Seagull at 2 power and 4 provisions before, and that was an absolute travesty. Seagulls dominated the meta, completely warped it around that card. And I believe that at 5 provisions it's not gonna be much different, as this card can play for 13 points, and if it's gonna be at 2 power, so for me that's way too much, especially since 8 points of those would be carryover points, which is pretty unhealthy. And you can replay this card with Reyas, with teleports, with Fukusia, right? So I believe if we want to go for 2 power for this card, we should nerf it to 6 provisions at least in the first place. I mean, personally, I would have preferred this card to just be at 4 provisions, but seeing how the Seagull Coalition is pretty hellbent on buffing this card to 2 power, I would rather take precautions for what they're trying to do and just nerf this card by provisions first. We also have Morwood. Morwood is mostly a nerf for casual players. Like, it's not really a card that is played in most of the top meta defining decks, right? But it has really high play rate on a casual level, lower ranks or lower MMR. And it's kind of just a boring card. Like, I mean, the condition is, yeah, you just have to wait for it to grow. That's it. There's no other condition. And it can be very strong point slam. So yeah, you can also use it with Osriel sometimes. I don't think the card is that strong, but I've seen a lot of casual players complaining about this card, and I don't mind the nerf. I mean, it's kind of a boring card in my opinion. And I also have Whisperer of Dol Blatana. This is probably the most controversial pick, and I've seen people being, yeah, just uncertain about the nerf to this card. Some people support it, some people are strongly opposed to it. I'm on the side that it deserves to get nerfed. As you guys know, I've played the Spelaton Necker deck quite a lot, and that deck, in my opinion, gets carried completely by this card. I mean, it can play for up to 36 points, and the fact that it's a bronze engine just makes it pretty problematic, as you can play it multiple times throughout the game. I believe it deserves a nerf. It's too easy to set it up, in my opinion. Like, you just need some orbs in the graveyard, or like a bunch of artifacts like Mushi Truffle or Mahakam Pass to proc this card a few times immediately, and then opponent still has to deal with it. And yeah, she's especially threatening in this Necker Spelatal deck, because that deck can put a lot of threats on the board and just overload the opponent with engines, which makes it hard to keep removal for every Whisperer, for example. And only one Whisperer needs to stick, and then you pretty much should win. As if you play Golden Necker after the Whisperer, she's gonna reach her full value pretty easily. Um, most of the time. So yeah, I like this card being strong, but I think it's comparable with Reverse, honestly, that it can carry the deck so hard that it deserves to join Reverse as a 7 provision engine. Okay, that's enough about the nerfs. Let's get into the buffs. Starting with power buffs, we have Bolt. I really like this card, honestly. It's a very cool ability, and this card is not played right now, just too hard to stick at 6 power, kind of too expensive at this power as well. I was wondering whether this should be a provision or a power buff, but I decided to go for the power buff because it makes Bolt easier to stick. It's especially huge against decks like Enslave 6, right? It puts it out of Enslave 6 range. But it also matters against some other removal ranges as well. And yeah, you can play this card with, for example, Sir Scratch a lot, as it's a cursed card, so you can like decrease the cooldown with it. You can also play it obviously in Northern Realms with Revenants or other cursed cards. I mean, if you see the cursed cards, right, it's mostly Northern Realms and monsters that have the most. There are also some pirate cursed cards. So I mean, you could technically consider it in Skellige. Although yeah, I would primarily play it in Northern Realms with the cursed archetype like Botchling, Revenants, maybe even an Anna or yeah, Draug. Or you could play it in monsters with Adastriga, Sir Scratch a lot, some of the bronze cards like Mantrap Damsel. I think it's a cool card and deserves a buff. Next we also have Swears. Swears is, yeah, I think just doesn't have enough power to justify playing him over Amnesty. And that's why I decided to go for a power buff. I think it could make this card considerable in some soldier decks, as in those decks it has an upside over Amnesty that it has the soldier tag, so it's gonna proc Crossbowman, for example. And yeah, you can set him up with Crossbowman or Light Cavalry pinks. It's kind of a high risk, high reward card, right? Like if you manage to seize opponent's engine, that is a really strong ability, but it can also brick in a short round. But with this buff, it would at least be considerable in some decks, in my opinion. And then we also have Eternal Fire Priest. I really like the buff to this card. I feel like it's a nice way to make the Firesworn archetype stronger. Obviously, there is a debate whether we should be buffing more like these bronze cards or the payoff cards instead, but I tried to buff Sacred Flame last month and it didn't go through, so I'm trying the other direction now. This card is not really played in Firesworn decks as there are better alternatives, and I believe it could be a good card to, for example, contest round 1 with, or maybe you could go for this card instead of playing Fallen Knights. It's a lot worse than Fallen Knights still, despite being 2 provisions cheaper. The Intimidate tag matters a lot, and also the fact that Fallen Knight buffs from each unit that spawns, right? So if you play a Congregation, it's gonna buff by 4 with the Intimidate as well. This card will only buff by 1 if you play Congregation. So the difference is pretty big, but yeah, I mean, this is a 4 provision card, so it's a lot cheaper. And I don't think this card will be played with Cyrus Hemelfard in non-Firesworn decks. I just don't think it synergizes enough. I think it's still better to just play Disciples, Inquisitors as targets in those decks. I mean, it could be a consideration, I guess, but I don't think it will be better than Inquisitor or Disciple in decks like that, so I don't really see it as an issue. And then let's get to the provision buffs. We have Avalak. Avalak is a really cool, versatile card. It can be used both as a mid-range card in control decks, setting up damage with Fog, So you can like put fog on a row, and then you deal damage to an engine, and then fog finishes it off, right? Or you can use this card in maybe Spelatelnecker decks, or even gift decks, right? Because it spawns a nature card. It's pretty versatile. Has I think it's a cool card. Not really played right now. I think it could use a buff. I also have Sheldon Skax. This is meant as a buff to the classic hand buff archetype. Usually when you see hand buff decks, these are mostly Renfree Invigorate decks with Torque and Farseers, and they usually don't play other payoff cards like Skax, for example, as it's just better to play mid-range cards in those decks. So buffing Sheldon might incentivize players to go a bit more all-in on hand buff instead of just playing Renfree, which I like. I think this card deserves a buff. The third buff is pretty cheeky. So this is a buff that might seem kind of, I don't know, boring at first, but I see it as a really cool buff to give players more deck building options. I mean, there are some decks that could actually just straight up play this card, like Northern Realm Knights, for example, Aglaïs decks, maybe Shiru decks. But it could also be considered in, like, for example, Necker decks if you just want a cheap artifact, right? This is your potential alternative to Vial. Or maybe you could play it in Alchemy to protect your engines, right? This card has various uses. You can also play it as a filler card in engine decks as a sort of protection for your engines, right? I don't think this card will be played that much, but I think it just gives players more deck building options, which I really like. And yeah, I think this card could see play in like decks that really profit from the boost ability. And yeah, it's also like an indirect buff to Aglaïs, because I'm pretty sure you will play this card in Aglaïs. So yeah, that's about it. I hope you guys like my picks. You can discuss them in the comments if you want to. I'm up to discuss with you guys if you make constructive points. Yeah, I'm really hoping personally that Seagulls won't be buffed to 2 power. It's kind of interesting. Usually we don't fight other coalitions directly, right? But I feel like in this case it's necessary. So yeah, we will see what happens, I guess. But yeah, that will be it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, make sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Bye bye.